Glad to have you back. You're still watching NEWSDAY here in Arise News. The nationwide strike by organised labour scheduled to commence today will not happen as the unions and the Nigerian government reached an agreement this morning on the contentious issues over the deregulation of the downstream sector of the oil industry and electricity, which led to a rise in petrol price and electricity tariffs. Yesterday's meeting among the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC, Trade Union Congress TUC, and the federal government agreed on a 2-week thaw for the rejig of the implementation of the policy on deregulation. Specifically, measures to alleviate the impact of the deregulation of the downstream sector of the oil industry was agreed upon, while the federal government committed to a 2-week suspension of the implementation of the electricity sector's cost-reflective tariffs, which came into effect on September 1. Among the agreements were palliative measures to cushion effects of the deregulation of the downstream sector, the timeline for revamping of refineries, and suspension of newly introduced reflective cost regime in the electricity tariff.
Well, for more on the suspended labour strike, Comrade ABIODUN AREMU, the General Secretary of the Joint Action Front, and YEMI ADAMOLEKUN, Executive Director of Enough is Enough, joins us. Thank you both for joining us on NEWSDAY.
It's a pleasure being with you.
Let me begin with you, Mr. ABIODUN AREMU. Did this come to you as a surprise, this suspension of the industrial action by Labour? Did Labour cave under pressure and threats from the government?
It's shocking and it's unexpected, because as at the 7 o'clock yesterday, when the expectation of a meeting to hold, the demands by Labour were very clear. That has to do with reversal, because in the last 72 hours, there have been various meetings with Labour to plead even about reduction, and those demands were rejected. So, but if within 4 hours, you now have a situation of almost a complete U-turn, then it's shocking. Because the policy of deregulation is a capitulation and acceptance that market forces can determine the prices. The central questions you see about the hike in prices is that the government must have business in business. So once you have accepted the policy of deregulation, it's like we have accepted a policy of suffering, a policy of being sensitive to the welfare of the working people and general public. It's not about palliative measure. It's essentially about how the wages will relate to the prevailing economic condition.
All right. Yemi, this is to you. Well, ABIODUN said government has business in business. What I've always heard is that government has no business in business. All right. This looks like a win-win, situation. Both the government and the labor organization disagreed to agree. What do you think was the factor that government was able to put forward to convince labor, and that labor was able to put forward to also convince government to reverse its stance on the tariffs on electricity?
Thank you. I'll have to disagree with Mr. I don't believe government has business in business. I believe the business that they have in business is providing an enabling environment and then providing a regulatory framework where businesses can operate fairly. And there will be people who will be outside of the realm of sort of society, if I want to use that phrase. And then businesses or government's role is then providing social services or social support to help those people. And I think that, for me, is the role of government. As far as Labour, I can't speak for Labour. I was not in the meeting. But what I would say as an outsider and a member of civil society is that Labour's actions, for me, were not surprising. If you had already set up in motion, there were probably 18 different unions who had sent letters saying a protest would start on Monday. By the time government is putting you to a meeting at 7 p.m., easily could have deferred the meeting till today if you were really serious about what it is that you were after. And the terms of the agreement, for me, are a joke. because it also shows, and I think contrary to maybe what Mr. AREMU thought, that Labour was really in this with the full understanding of what they were trying to get. How can the federal government of Nigeria agree or put as a concession we're going to fix refineries? Turnaround maintenance for our refineries have been part of our budget for easily 10 years, if not since we returned to civilian rule. It was part of 2012 issues that our refineries are not working, and they have continued not to work. In 2015 or 2014, when President Buhari was running under a change agenda, he said very clearly that fuel subsidy is a scam. So what are we moving now? And he has not addressed Nigerians who say, oops, I made a mistake. There is a subsidy and blah, 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 blah. But so for me, more fundamentally are really the principles around which this government operates as it relates to Nigerian citizens, not necessarily what Labour did or didn't do. Because for me, this is not particularly surprising for Labour. If they had done for one day, I would have been pleasantly surprised and quite happy, because there are a lot of more fundamental issues in the way the government is being run. But Labour's sort of meeting and negotiating and agreeing with government is par for course over the last couple of years.
Yeah, let me stay with you. Labour says this is suspended. It is not called off. So there's a 2 weeks grace for the federal government here to meet those plans. However, I hear you say these are not tangible enough. But what would you say was the problem here? Is it that this current Labour leadership does not wield that pressure power? Or does not have the buy-in of the Nigerian public anymore? I'll let Yemi respond to that question, and then I would like you, ABIODUN, to also respond.
I think two things. One, Labour represents organized Labour. Let's not mistake it. So it's sort of using them as a yardstick for Nigerians, I think it's a bit of a stretch. But they represent organized Labour, which provides a concentrated block of citizens that can respond to an action. So because it's sort of a top-down system of command, whatever the leadership of Labour agree on, but if you say everybody stay home, everybody stays home. So they are the only significant bloc in Nigeria today that can command, in a sense, a mass response, but that's still organized. So everybody that runs a private business doesn't fall under organized Labour. But they're able to do that in a way that then affects everybody else in terms of what they do. And that's what they leverage on, and that's the ability and the power that they have. Unfortunately, in 2012, when this same issue that we're going through, different government, it was a PDP government, fuel subsidy was going to be removed or fuel prices increased. Citizens came out to protest. It was citizens that led that protest. Labour then joined. And unfortunately, I was a part of that movement in 2012. We ceded the space to Labour. And they then took control of the narrative, and then government began to negotiate with Labour. Even though Labour didn't start the process, neither did they lead the protest in 2012. And unfortunately, again, from 2012 to elections in 2015, elections in 2019, we didn't build on that momentum in building and enabling citizens to understand the dynamics. And before we go too far, I think let's just be very clear. The dynamics of this conversation is that fuel subsidy and electricity tariffs, at least from where I sit, I can't speak for Labour, provide trigger points to explain a much larger issue in government. And I don't use the rich deliberately. I'm using government, the ruling elite. Because our governors work for 4 years, but then they get a pension that they get for life. Their family is entitled to care abroad, they get cars, blah, 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 blah.
All right.
We have a National Assembly and their languages.
Thank you, Yemi.
No, but I think it's important.
Very quickly, we have to go on the break, Yemi. Thank you so much. We'll be right back to continue this conversation. Yemi ADAMOLEKUN and ABIODUN AREMU. Stay with us. Great to have you back. You're still watching NEWSDAY here on the Rise News channel with me, Adesomoran, and India Mugo. But we do have ABIODUN AREMU of the Joint Action Front and Yemi ADAMOLEKUN of the Enough is Enough civil society group. Mr. ABIODUN, just to respond to that question I threw to Yemi before the break, why is it that Labour could not muster the pressure you accuse them of not having? What went wrong?
Yeah, you see, I listen to Yemi speaks, and it's like I'm listening to an outsider about the event in the last 10 years speaking on this issue. Because first and foremost, about government having business in government. The Constitution is very clear. The major sectors of the economy shall be managed by the government. And the petroleum resources constitute a basic industry and major sector of Nigerian economy. That section of the Constitution, section 16, went further to say that wealth shall not be, the government shall manage the economy in such way that wealth is not concentrated in few hands at the expense of majority. By virtue of section 16, deregulation, privatization is unknown to the Nigerian Constitution. Every act of privatizations and deregulations are unknown to the spirit and letter of the Nigerian Constitution. That's number one. Secondly, how come a country that is one of the largest producers of crude cannot maintain the refinery? Thirdly, this government rode on the wave of the hike of prices of petroleum products against the last regime. And the actors in this regime promised a liter of fuel was not to sell up to 100 naira in this country. Fourthly, on May 10, 2016, the government claimed to have removed subsidy and to have totally deregulated the petroleum sector, the downstream sector of the petroleum. What that means is this: the fuel that was selling as at 2012, 2022, as at January 16, 2012, now sold from that period is 6 naira 50 kobo. That was the NNPC price. The public price was 87 naira. Sold between 2012 and 2016 when it was increased by 58 naira. And they claim they have removed the subsidy. The question the government should answer today are many. First, there is a precedent of fraud and corrupt atrocities. Because where goes the subsidy that accrued since May 11, 2016 till now? Because at May 11, 2016, there was not supposed to be any subsidy.
Well, the government... let me come in here. Well, the government has said they're spending about trillions. I can't give you the...
No, that's what I'm saying. You see, I feel that if you go and investigate this, on May 23, 2016, there was a conference at the airport hotel to undermine the strike organized by the NLC and which the Joint Action Front joined. And the crux of the argument is that subsidy has been removed. As a matter of fact, the civil society, the CSO and NGOs that are part of that conference, including the present Minister of State of Labor, these are point of fact.
Let's move forward.
No, you have to. You see, you can't move forward.
We can't stay on this point.
No,
this will be an argument for you and the government now, because the government is saying
we're in the public space.
The government is saying they have spent trillions and trillions.
We are saying the government is fraudulent on the basis of that.
Okay, let me.
That's the argument.
Let me take this further.
That's the argument that we are saying, that there is no subsidy.
Let me take this further.
And for us to move forward, just hold on. The Joint Action Front, because YEMI talk about citizen space. The Joint Action Front started that struggle January 3rd, 2012. And we met with labor. It's not just about citizen space. We created the Ojota space. And with organized labor, we did a struggle from January 9. We were the last on the street on January 16. When the soldiers intervened and repressed the protests.
All right, ABIODUN,
so this fact must be put right.
Okay, fine. I don't know, but you're taking some time. Let's get in YEMI on this issue. Now, Yemi, well, I'm sure you'd want to respond to some of the things that Abiodun said. But before that, on the petroleum sector, one of the agreements reached is the need for urgency to increase the local refining capacity to reduce over-dependence on importation of the product. Now, one wonders how Labour will get this done, and the CSOs ensure that Labour and CSOs, which you're a part of, how they will be able to get this done. If you bear in mind the fact that for as long as we keep on importing fuel, this the price increases or decreases will be it will dance to the tune of the vagaries of the international oil market. If prices go up, that means port price will go up. If it comes down, port price will go up for as long as we're not refining in this country. Yemi?
Well, it's a bit of both. So, excuse me, if I produce oil locally, the market, and I mean, I guess people say this in the context of they're assuming that if the market price of oil is $100 per barrel, because I produce it locally, I'll be willing to sell it for $70 per barrel. That's the assumption that's the sort of starting assumption.
Yeah,
about
because cost of labor and some other cost, of course, will be reduced. Then
No. I said the cost of crude. I haven't talked about refinery. I just said the cost of crude.
Okay.
So that the value that I get for my crude is the same, like if I sell it, for example, on the open market. So we refine locally, it reduces the cost, a bit, yes. But, and I guess for me, that was the point I was trying to make. Part of the agreement that Labour went into government was that we have 4 refineries in the country that don't work. Now, suddenly, this administration is saying by December, they're going to start working. And these promises have been the same since, and as I said, for a decade, if not longer. So you're right. That was part of my point about I don't see why Labour would believe this administration that suddenly this would then change. And that's the same point I'm making. I'm not quite sure what you want me to say more to that.
All right. Well, maybe you should. I don't know whether you wanted to respond to some of the issues you raised, which Abiodun differed with you on.
Well, I mean, the main thing he differed with is about the Constitution and
government being a business. Yeah.
The Constitution, depending on what we are arguing or debating, the Constitution is a problematic document in a lot of ways, and the role of government in managing resources. We talk about it from everything from mining, local, who owns it. We talk about it even in the context of the Niger Delta, who owns it, where should our resources go, should they go to those whose land it's sitting on, and what that looks like. But the framing that I will sit on is that government has a role in business, but as we've seen, and this is what we keep coming back to, our government and the way it is currently structured is unable to curb its own excesses in the way that it manages this. In 2012, Alison Diaziani's point was that, people are taking oil, and the map is still the same. Nigeria, for the sake of argument, sells petroleum at $1 per liter, and all our border countries will be selling it at either $4 or $5 or $6, which tells you simply that we're also not only subsidizing Nigeria. Exactly. Yeah, and then the crude is, the petrol is going through borders, going through security, going through Nigerians, and it's also owned the infrastructure of it, of the people who are cutting it across.
All right. Another compromise that was reached here.
We're fast forward to 2012.
Okay. We seem to have a bit of distortion
with
there.
The network there.
Yeah,
but we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, but Yemi, let me ask you, because another compromise that was reached was the suspension of hike in electricity tariffs. Cost-reflective tariff has been a debate in the country. It's one of the list across the continent. Wherever you look at, we do not have cost-reflective tariff for electricity. It's also a condition the World Bank has given, the IMF has given for meeting a loan condition.
Both in petrol, both in the PMS.
It was also for electricity tariff. Do you think we are postponing doomsday? How long can we postpone this?
Postpone what? I missed
electricity tariff hike, cost-reflective tariff.
Right. Okay. So I think three things are important to speak to about that. Since the discos were privatized about 7 years ago, they've received 1.5 trillion naira in bailout funds, but they were privatized, so they're owned by private companies, 40% owned by the government, except for Yola, which is solely owned by the government, and 60% owned by private players. At the time that it was privatized, one of the requirements by BPE was that every owner group needed to have a technical partner. Of the 10 discos that had technical partners, not one technical partner stayed beyond 6 months, not one. And that condition was solely to say that, look, this is a new space, you need technical. Also, so that's problem number one.
All right. Looks like we're really having a challenge with the network there where YEMI is. But all right, ABIODUN, AREMU, you're still there. Do you think that the government should have consulted before these decisions were made? Or do you think this was an intended strategy on the part of the government? What's your sense? Very briefly,
you see, that's the
ABIODUN.
point that we want to evade, and we can't evade that point. You see, once you take a policy of deregulations, the implications are very clear. So whatever is being packaged to be done in the next 2 weeks, just a strategy to further hammer the essence of deregulation. Now you privatize the electricity sector, the generating aspect of the electricity sector. You sold it at 400 billion. Now you spend public money to the tune of 1.5 trillion. How do you relate to that? Because the buyers of the Gencos, ideally, should have their private capital.
That's true.
That's the point that we are raising. You see, so what you are having is that you have people in government looting public resources to run their businesses. That's essentially what is happening. But what sense does it make? You spend over 300 billion on an asset. You now sell the same asset for 400 billion. So it's no longer your asset. Now you spend 1.5 trillion of public funds. That's the question. The agreement with the academic staff union, ASU, since 2009 is 1.3 trillion. The former central bank governor, Lamido Sanusi, took 620 billion of public funds, central bank fund, to bail out private capital. So our question is this: where is the private capital in this country? Why must you run down all the public facilities? That's the central issue. That you are having a government that is imbuing corrupt atrocity. You are having a system imbuing corrupt atrocity. Because most of the elements in this government were the same elements who critiqued Jonathan administration. Those are the central issues. There is no truth about government falsifications. We can bring out all the old newspapers in May 2016. The argument of this government on deregulation. They have deregulated it. Why are the refineries not working? How can a country not run a single refinery? And that is the same claim. And that's why I want this thing to be noted. In 2 weeks' time, you are still going to have that problem. For 4 years, there couldn't be that refinery.
All right. ABIODUN AREMU of the JAF and YEMI ADAMOLEKUN of Enough is Enough. Thank you so much for your time on NEWSDAY.